very hard for that messaging to come through. I'm not saying it can't,
Right.
but there's more resonance, like you're saying, an ability for our soul, our spirit, our messages to
thrive.
flourish and thrive when the body is in some level of harmony.
Oh, so agree with that. And so what's behind the cause of this rise in chronic illnesses happening in our country?
Well, I'm a firm believer in multifactorial everything. There's not one thing that's happening. There's the evolution of our food system. There's the evolution of technology. There's the evolution of toxins. There's the evolution of stress. There's so many things that are evolving.
Hello, my extraordinary women friends. As I'm recording this intro, it's the big April 8th eclipse day and spring is in the air. A perfect time to start anew for anything that you're creating in your own life. One area that I keep hearing a lot of people talking about these days is wellness, and that I celebrate. As entrepreneurs, we have to take care of our sacred vessel of ourself in order to do our best work. Over the past several years, I've been on my own personal health journey, working closely with a functional nutritionist, an Ayurvedic coach, making it a goal to move my body every day and make space for meditation. I'm currently on 205 consecutive days on Insight Timer, and if I look back over the past 4 to 5 years, there have been very few days that I have missed. I pay attention to the nutrition I choose, and I love getting out in nature for walks with my dogs and spending time with my horses. All of this makes me show up as my best me. It's this journey that makes today's guest so special to me. I'm thrilled to introduce Andrea Nakayama, a functional medicine nutritionist and educator who has not only led thousands of clients to reclaim ownership of their health, but also teaches coaches and clinicians around the world to spark a revolution in healthcare. As the host of the 15-Minute Matrix podcast and the founder and former CEO of Functional Nutrition Alliance, Andrea's work is in the forefront of addressing the chronic illness epidemic through systems biology, mental models, root cause methodology, and the therapeutic partnership. After the heartbreaking loss of her young husband to a brain tumor in 2002, Andrea discovered her passion for using food as personalized medicine. Today, she is a sought-after nutrition expert for the toughest clinical cases by world-renowned doctors and trains nearly 4,000 practitioners each year in her groundbreaking methodologies. In our conversation, Andrea shares her journey to using food as medicine, the gaps she identified in functional medicine, and her unconventional approach to testing in labs. We'll also explore the state of chronic illness in our country, the challenges many face in getting accurate diagnosis or sufficient care, and how Andrea has built a successful business while managing her own health challenges as a single mom. Andrea's story is not just inspiring, it's a testament to the power of resilience, knowledge, and the unwavering belief in the healing potential of food and holistic health practices. So let's get ready to be inspired by Andrea's wisdom and insights into creating a healthier, more vibrant life. Let's meet Andrea Nakayama. Well, welcome to Extraordinary Women Radio, Andrea. It's great to have you here today.
Tammy, I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited for our conversation as well. It's a topic near and dear to my heart for sure. It's I've been on my own health journey, and I think what you're doing is really amazing, and I think you have some really unique perspectives to be bringing out to the world. And you're working with so many women, bringing your wisdom. I think that's exciting. You know, you started out as a practitioner in the world of functional nutrition, but really moved into the space of serving practitioners with their work. So
Yes.
I'm excited to hear, that story, that journey that you've gone on. But first, I wanted to start with your story of how you landed in the world of functional nutrition and, just your journey to that, to doing the work that you're doing today.
Yeah, and
What
it
took
was
you
a
in that
later
space?
career for me,
Yeah.
what took me to the space. So I didn't start out as a practitioner. I actually have a BFA. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts. I studied art and design.
Hmm.
I ultimately was working in book publishing when my late husband was diagnosed with a very aggressive brain tumor when I was just 7 weeks pregnant.
Oh
At
man.
that time, I was a real foodie. We would have these elaborate dinner parties and shop at the farmer's market. And when he was diagnosed, out of the blue, no previous signs or symptoms that we could attribute to a brain tumor, I really started to look into what else we could be doing to extend his life. He was given a prognosis of 6 months to live. I'm 7 weeks pregnant. He's given 6 months to live. We can do the math. It didn't look good. So I dove into all the research around what you could do diet and lifestyle wise in relation to cancer and in relation to the treatments he was going through. So I think of that time as my boot camp. I was not trying to fight the cancer. That's not the role of diet and lifestyle modification, but to support the terrain in which the cancer was growing and in which the treatments were going. So thinking about what we could do to support whatever treatments he was experiencing. One of those things, just to get super practical, was reading about the role of sugar in the bloodstream and how that can contribute to the growth of new cells. And when we have cancer cells, those are new cells that are replicating at a very fast rate. So just thinking about what's the connection between sugar and cancer growth and what changes we were going to make. I would bring that to Isamu, my late husband. He would consider, we'd decide what to do. And then I became the person who would execute in the kitchen, which was a way that gave me something to do in the face of
Right.
such a grave diagnosis. So it wasn't until after Isamu passed 2.5 years later, and I had a friend who was diagnosed with colon cancer, that I kind of realized this was my calling, that there were gaps in medicine, that there was some gaps I wanted to fill. And I put myself back through years and years of school while working full time and being a single parent. I should say Isamu lived 2.5 years, not 6 months. So he did have time to imprint on our son. He died
Mm.
in 2002. So that was really the beginning of my own journey. And there's so much more to tell after that, but that was really the impetus for doing the work that I
That's
do
what took you
today.
down this
Yes.
pathway of really uncovering that. And as you're as you're and my sympathies and
Thank
losing
you.
your husband, and it's,
Thank
I
you.
mean, such a difficult journey. I've lost I lost my sister to brain cancer, and actually took a lot of pause at that time as well to really, consider health, like what are the
Yes.
things we can do for our health. So I've done a lot of research. I've worked with a lot of experts in this space, and just ensure that I bring health to, that I'm, doing all the things to take care of me. And so I think we have these circumstances that happen, um, that really takes us down this interest of learning more and
Yes.
digging into more. And there's so much to learn. And as you dove down this pathway, what were some of the gaps you were seeing from what was there and what was to be discovered for you?
Yeah, so many gaps. I mean, I think initially with Isamu, my late husband, I noticed that there was a gap in treating the human. So he
Hmm.
was his diagnosis, period, the end. Like that's how he was seen, as a walking glioblastoma. And I don't know what kind of
That
tumor
was
you're seeing.
exactly
Yeah.
what my sister had.
So I'm
Hmm.
sorry for that loss
Yeah,
as well. But as you know, it's a very aggressive tumor. It
totally.
depends where it is and what's happening. But yeah, he was seen as his diagnosis, and there was no ability to see beyond that. And so immediately I was like, wait a minute, not everybody with the same diagnosis is in the same same ecosystem. Internally, there's a big gap in our understanding. There's a gap in understanding the impacts of nutrition, and not a lot of research there. The body of research is growing in relation to stress and meditation and diet and lifestyle modification, but there's not a lot of money there. So there isn't a lot of research. So there's a gap in research. There's a gap in time. We see our doctors maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, depending on the situation. But there's a lot of time and a lot of moments in the day and a lot of opportunities that are a gap between our care if we're looking only to doctors to deliver our care. I don't know if I said in my gap in the understanding of diet and lifestyle modification from a research perspective that it also is in a clinical perspective. Doctors are in tens of thousands of hours of medical training. They probably get max 17 hours of training around diet. And so there's a big gap in so many areas where I was like, wait a minute, there's a lot that we can do to empower ourselves, for people to be empowered to understand their bodies better when we are between our medical visits. Most women I was speaking to didn't understand where their stomach was in relation to their intestines, where their liver was. I realized people don't know what the lymphatic system is. I realized there were these huge gaps that we're trying to do self-care and that we're dieting in relation to diet culture and what we're doing to look a certain way or perform a certain way, but we're not understanding our bodies. And I really wanted to help fill that gap so that we all are more empowered when we're making choices about what we engage in terms of our self-care.
So I love that. And it's, one of the things that as I was like doing a lot of learning myself, was just the power of our individual cells, and how they're regenerating so often, and such a frequency that we can do a lot by taking care of ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. And I think we sometimes even get way too complicated about how we're thinking about health. We do think it has to be, oh, do I need to be keto or intermittent fasting, or maybe I need a continuous glucose monitor. And there's some easier principles that do take care of ourselves that are more universal. If you look at any dietary theory or any best practices that are similar, that make life and living a bit easier than having to go on these programs that we go off and on and off and on and off and on, and really miss the opportunity to step into the kind of breathing and living space of self-care, which is not being on a narrow path.
Right. So when you think of some of those, what are a few of those principles that you like to speak to?
Yeah, so when it comes, I have lots of threes. So one of the things that I really love about teaching is that we can break it down into systems thinking or mental models that helps us to understand things better. And a lot of them I do in threes because it's easy to remember threes. So I might speak into a lot of threes here, but one of my threes are what I call the non-negotiable trifecta. And the non-negotiables are part of another set of threes. But the non-negotiable trifecta is sleep, poop, and blood sugar balance. And when we think about blood sugar balance, then I'm leading people to another set of threes, which is fat, fiber, protein at every meal. Eat your fat, fiber, protein. Eat the rainbow. So, plant power your diet, because this is how we get a lot of nutrients in and a lot of fiber in. And know your yes, no, maybe list. So pause, take some time, and know in functional medicine, we call these your mediators. What makes you feel better? What makes you feel worse? And what are you unsure about? And I find, Cami, this goes in two directions. Either people are like, I don't know what I eat that makes me feel good and what makes me feel bad. I just feel bad all the time. I'm fatigued. I get headaches. My body aches. I don't know. And that means we have to do a little pausing and inquiry. Or they've gone into a realm of food hypersensitivity where they're trying to control the way their body feels or their emotions or mind feels through their food and nothing feels good. And so they're really thinking that everything's bad. And in that situation, from a functional perspective, we've only done one piece of the puzzle. We've removed, but we haven't repaired. And like you said beautifully, the body can repair. We need to repair so that the diet can be as vast as it can possibly be for that individual in that one time. Diversity in our diet is really, really critical. And so I find a lot of times it's about making some assumptions about what we're supposed to do that aren't really helpful. So again, fat, fiber, protein at every meal. We can dive into that or not. Eat the rainbow and know your yes, no, maybe list. And if there's a lot of no's, you may need some help to understand why. If there are no no's, take a pause, start tracking if that feels okay and safe to you, and see, how do I feel? What changes? We have something called a food, mood, poop journal in the clinic and in my teaching that helps people understand what's happening in a day. And the mood, I'm putting in air quotes because it's any sign, symptom, or diagnosis.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like this because it's like really getting into ways that we can start to pay attention and learn what our body, because each one of our bodies is so unique and so different. There's no right or wrong answer that's going to fit for every single person. It's real, and that's, I think, one of the things I've loved about functional nutritionists are that they're really getting into the heart of what does my body really like, and what are things that, stay away from? I mean, so it's your yes and no's and maybes and that sort of thing. I think that's fascinating. I think what's happened is we're seeing so many chronic illnesses just showing up. I mean, autoimmunity was not something we talked about 20 years ago, or at least it wasn't in my space. I didn't have these conversations. And I grew up in a household where my father was a diabetic, and he was type 1 diabetic. He got it when he was in his early 20s. He was a football player, very healthy, very fit, and still had type 1 diabetic. And, we can go back through family lines, where it was very prevalent. So we had stuff like that happening in our family, but definitely didn't have we never talked about autoimmune diseases, which diabetes is one.
Especially type 1, yes.
Yeah. But it's, it's shifted and changed. Is it an evolution of new teachings that have come about, or is it something that's always been there that we just didn't have insights into?
Chronic illness is definitely on the rise. There's a lot more insults that we are exposed to of all different sorts. And when I think about autoimmunity or any chronic condition, and I mean you're sick and not getting better. And I think we also share, Cami, we both have Hashimoto's. We got there for different reasons, but we need to look at what the commonalities are. So this is another model of 3. I call it 3 roots, many branches. Any chronic sign, symptom, or diagnosis is a branch. Diabetes is a branch, Hashimoto's is a branch, lupus is a branch, rheumatoid arthritis is a branch, arthritis is a branch, right? Anything that we have chronically is a branch. Long COVID is a branch. Any sign, symptom, or diagnosis. We don't want to focus on the branches. That's where medicine focuses. And this is again a gap, right? They try to put a Band-Aid on the branch. I prefer that we go deeper to the trunk, deeper still to the roots, and there are always 3 of them activated. But as patients, we can focus on the soil those roots live in. So the 3 roots for any chronic condition are our genes, our digestion, and our inflammation. And all 3 of those things are activated more in negative ways with the evolution of time for a number of reasons. So our genes, we cannot change our genes, but we can influence the expression of our genes. So sure, we get a blueprint, but we don't know if that blueprint is expressed or not. I'm not telling people to go out and get genetic testing because it tells you what you are. It doesn't tell you what's expressed. And we don't understand enough yet to use testing to understand what could we actually do. And this is another error that I think people are making in the realm of hyper testing, which I'm not a huge fan of. So the soil or the circle of influence around our genes is our food, our movement, our environment, and our mindset. Those things will influence our genetic expression. And
Yeah.
there's a lot we can do in each of those. I have a circle of influence around each of those.
It's
Digestion.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because I work with entrepreneur women, right? So I'm working with women, and one of the things I talk about is our R factor. How do we take care of ourselves? How do we resonate?
Yes.
And so it's our mind, it's our body, it's our spirit, however you spirit, and then it's our community that, that wraps and, supports us in that space. But it's such an intricate part of being an entrepreneur is how we take care of this beautiful vessel that we
Yes.
have, um, so that we can show up in our best work.
Yes, and I really believe, like you do, Cami, that when our body is kind of humming, when it's functional, so to speak, meaning it
Mhm.
works to the best of its ability in that time, that the messages come through us, that there's room for what it is we need to express or create.
Mhm.
When we're chronically in pain or we're chronically seeking a solution outside of ourselves, it's very hard for that messaging to come through. I'm not saying it can't,
Right.
but there's more resonance, like you're saying, an ability for our soul, our spirit, our messages to
To thrive.
flourish and
Yeah.
thrive
Yeah.
when the body is in some level of harmony.
Oh, so agree with that. And so what's behind the cause of this rise in chronic illnesses happening in our country?
Well, I'm a firm believer in multifactorial everything. There's not one thing that's happening. There's the evolution of our food system. There's the evolution of technology. There's the evolution of toxins. There's the evolution of stress. There's so many things that are evolving to load up our buckets that we are having to carry with everything we're exposed to. And
Yeah.
we have less time and resources in some ways to be able to offset those stressors because we're loading up our buckets more and more and more with what we have to do and what we're responsible for, and then what we eat in relation to our busyness and how we eat and when we sleep and how late we stay up. And there's so many things that are interrupting our abilities to thrive. I was reading a study this morning that was talking about a town in China and the exposure to city light increasing the risk of stroke. Right. So they
Oh,
did
interesting.
a study over a long period of time of nighttime light outside. But it makes me wonder, all the people who have a TV in their bedroom or glowing lights all around their room, is that adding to a bucket that we then have to offset, and we don't have the time and internal resources to offset that?
Mm.
Inflammation is higher for a number of reasons. I don't think we can talk about digestion or nutrition without talking about digestion, since that's where the
Yeah.
two shall meet, which is why it's really the second root in the three root system. So there's so many reasons. And I think we saw this with COVID, and I don't want to get into, all the crazy COVID politics, but we saw that there was an increase in people having long-term symptoms. That's not
Hmm.
new. People have
Right.
had chronic infections for a long time that have experienced something similar. And we also saw that we were seeing people who were like, I thought they were perfectly healthy, and then they didn't do well or they passed
Right.
due to an infection. That's because there's a lot going on under the surface, and it might just take one extra factor to tip that overboard. And I don't mean to sound doomsday. I'm just saying, like, we got a lot going on in there, especially as women.
Yeah.
And we have a lot we need to mitigate, and the insults are just increasing.
So where does one start? I mean, what's, given all the circumstances around us, where does somebody start?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just need to start really basically and not be taking on too much. I mean, I was thinking about this, Cami, in considering our conversation today and thinking about my business growth. I am a person who takes one step at a time. I believe it when I see it. I don't have like grandiose notions of I'm going to summit Mount Everest and I'm out there tomorrow. I recognize that there are base camps and that it's one thing at a time. So if there's one thing you can do today to support your food, your movement, your environment, or your mindset, pick your area. I've worked with people who can't start with food. It's
Mm-hmm.
too triggering of a topic. So
Mm-hmm.
let's not start with food. Let's start with just thinking about your sleep. Help me understand what's going on with your sleep. So again, sleep, poop, blood sugar balance, pick one of those that you want to look at a little bit more, get curious before you take action. And I worry that we take action and we lose traction because we are so looking for a fix. And it's bigger than that. It's a
Yeah.
bigger journey.
Yeah. So I know you've developed a whole body of work. Now, today you work with practitioners, functional nutritionist practitioners, like 4,000 a year. You're working with a lot of practitioners and really shaping their work so that the ripple effect of your work is huge. What's different that you're bringing to your clients today than what they're learning in general functional nutritionists their
Yeah. I
functional
mean,
nutritionist education?
I think our education is like completely different because it really does help us understand how to move into a case, how to understand a human. It's not
Hmm.
based on testing. It's not that I'm against testing. It's just that we do testing when we need it for more information. And oftentimes in functional practices today, it's done too quickly, which makes it cost prohibitive and really not even effective because we might have too much information at the wrong time. So I think we're giving people a way to understand what's going on in the body. So I'm teaching anatomy and physiology through a functional lens. How do diet and
Mm,
lifestyle modification impact the immune system? What's going on in the body? Number two, really understanding systems thinking. So the best thinkers in the world had mental models that helped them to solve problems. So I've created all these mental models that ensure for us as practitioners, we're asking ourselves the right question. We're not jumping to the protocols because your Hashimoto's protocol is different than mine Hashimoto's protocol. Just because we have Hashimoto's doesn't mean we need to follow the same rules. Some
right.
may be the same, but a lot's going to be different. And so the thinking today is what's the protocol for? What am I supposed to do for? And I'm really challenging that thinking with systems thinking. And then the third part, so we have what's going on
Systems
in the
being
body.
the roots of
Systems
our.
being like how we solve, how do we think? So for me, three roots, many branches,
Hmm.
three tiers to nutrition mastery. It's just a systematic way of thinking so that
Hmm.
we're not looking just for the check boxes.
Yeah.
They did this,
Yeah.
they did this, they did this, because that's when people are coming to me going, then what? Didn't
Yeah.
work. What worked for
Yeah.
me didn't work for them. And the third piece that I want to bring in that I'm teaching into or fostering, because it's hard to teach, is critical thinking. And without critical thinking in clinical care, we miss the opportunity to help people. You have to stop, listen, use your brain and the information you know to enable for transformation to occur.
Fascinating. So fascinating. Um, you have built such a very successful business, and you've hit on it a little bit from the perspective. It's like you're taking one base camp at a time. Tell us a little bit about this journey of building your business and how it's transformed over the years.
Yeah, I think, like I was saying, I didn't start with a business plan that led me to where I was. I could never have told you where I would be
It's
today.
such often the case.
Yeah, it just was like one thing at a time and learning, allowing myself to learn from that. So I have a 5P model that I teach into business, thinking about business. I also think it works as a patient, but that 5P model is passion, permission, purpose, persistence, and perseverance. And all of those were in the bucket for me. So the passion, I think we all have, we want to do something.
Right.
Permission is where I think most women fail. We don't give ourselves permission to put ourselves out there, recognize where we may trip and fall. We don't, we take rejection really to heart instead of recognizing that we might get a lot of rejections. I heard something this week that the woman who wrote the book Lessons in Chemistry that became an Apple TV series that's phenomenal if anybody wants to watch it, was rejected 98 times in her book proposal. And it was the 99th time that led to the book deal that led to a series on Apple TV that's gotten big
And what was it called again?
Lessons in Chemistry.
Okay.
Really good watch. And I think that that's a place where we take those rejections to heart, and it's recognizing like, okay, that's just feedback. What do I learn from that? Purpose is the heart of the 5P model. If we don't have a purpose, we will sink in all those other areas. And the purpose has to be bigger than us.
Yes.
So for me, witnessing my husband experience those gaps became bigger. It's like the mom lifting the car off the child. Like, I will learn things I don't want to learn. I will learn to market and to sell and because the purpose, right? I won't do it just for my passion. It's not big enough. The purpose drives me. And then the persistence and perseverance. Persistence is showing up regularly. And perseverance is I'm going to fall down and I'm going to get back up.
Yeah.
And so for me, that model is really how I did it. It wasn't like I had some vision of where it was going to go. And I think this is a mistake I see a lot of my students make. They say like, I want to do what you do. And I'm like, actually, you don't. Like, you don't want, it's not been easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you want
and everybody's journey
balance,
is going to be different, right? Every journey is gonna go in different roads, and so makes sense that and your journey is. I love your 5Ps. I think they're all so good, just from the perspective of every journey is like if we're bringing those 5Ps into our lives, that's going to move the needle for us at the end of every day.
Yes.
And that's what you're talking about is every day we're moving the needle to that next space.
Yes. And it's continual. I've also had students say to me, you don't understand. I'm doing this for the first time. And when you're growing, every time is the first time. I'm doing new things that make me feel really nervous or nobody responds to, but I'm stretching myself and always moving into new areas and welcoming the discomfort, because it's not like the world meets you with applause or there's a red carpet rolled out for you when you are starting a business, especially as a female.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So true. This is so good. Where can people learn more about you and your work?
Yeah. So if you go to AndreaNakayama.com, that will lead you to all of the places, back to Functional Nutrition Alliance, which is the brand I built and where the practitioner training is, to my podcast over there, to my writing over there. And AndreaNakayama.com is where I'm experimenting with the new writing that I'm doing for a book that is more focused on the patient population. So AndreaNakayama.com, lots of A's. And you can find your way to all the places from there.
And all those links will be, we'll put provide a link in the show notes for that as well. Cool. And so the final question I always close with is, what are 3 pearls of wisdom you'd like to leave with us today?
What are 3 what?
pearls of wisdom.
Pearls of wisdom. I think we shared a lot of pearls of wisdom.
We
I think
did.
it's really what I'm really focusing on right now is what it takes to truly stop and listen. And this is to listen to the people around us, to listen to our clients, if that's, or the people we're trying to serve, but also to listen into ourselves. So I'm going to put listen over the bucket of the people we love and who love us, the people we serve, and ourselves, and make those the three pearls.
Yep.
That pausing, stopping, listening is really something I think we could all gain a lot of insight from.
So beautiful. Well, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to meet you, to hear, all of your good wisdom, and you're doing beautiful, amazing work. So thank
Thank
you
you,
for
Kim.
joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.